Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, the podcast about how to live life with love, passion, and purpose. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to heal your emotional past, identify real compatibility, and find long-lasting love through the merging of ancient science, modern technology, and quantum physics. Tired of superficial connections? Start your free Soulmate Connection membership today at loveinyourhands.com. Now here's your host, Cynthia Clark, palm reading consultant, compatibility expert, and heart harmonizer. Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Cynthia Clark, and I'm excited to talk about writing and publishing today. It's definitely a topic that I think a lot of people are interested in, and maybe you have a hidden book inside of you. I know that I ended up with one, and I certainly didn't consider myself a writer at all. However, maybe you have a palm mark in your hands, and I like to start out the show with a little palm reading lesson. So there is a marker called the writer's fork that sometimes shows up on the end of your headline. And so the headline is actually located here in the center part of your hand, and it runs pretty much just like cuts the hand in half. If you look at the hand, and it's a more or less a horizontal line that runs across the hand, that's called your headline. And your headline relates to the way that you think and also how much you think. So if this line happens to end in a little tiny fork, and not a big fork, by the way, it has to be just a little teeny one, that's what we call the writer's fork. So if you happen to have this in your hands, then that means you have the gift of writing, and maybe you should think about writing in some part of your future or in some capacity. So that's today's palm reading lesson, and I'm really excited to bring in our guest for today. We've got Jared Rosen, who is the founder and chief visionary officer at Dream Sculpt Books and Media. He's also the author of several award-winning books. So thank you, Jared, so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So
I guess I had that line.
I was going to say, you probably have this in your headline. So yeah, when I discovered that in my headline, I was like, oh no, I'm not a writer. But it turns out I ended up doing a book. So, go figure that one. But yeah, so how did you get started? Can you give us a little bit of your background and how did you
Sure.
get into this?
Well, I don't think I saw a line in my hand or in my head that I would do anything with words or writing, because I actually was a visual artist. And it all started when I began doodling in school when I was a small child. But it evolved to the degree that I was a fine artist, painter, and media artist in New York City in the late 1970s, which was quite a epic time in the art world. And so I got to have firsthand experience in that world, which by the early 80s I chose to leave the art world and went on a new path. I went off to study meditation, shamanism in the mountains of Peru, and went on this journey of self-discovery. Ended up becoming a psychotherapist and art therapist, so I was able to continue to use art, and consciousness became very important to me. And I started researching and developed systems and taught them, from more energy healing to corporate transformation. How I ended up in with books, and it's interesting because I always think about my English teacher. I think it was in maybe 8th grade, who I was reading a report, and there were a couple of kids snickering. I don't know what my book report was on, or my essay was on, but she started snickering. And it left a pretty bad mark for me that my English teacher I was kind of good looking, and I sort of was attracted to, was laughing at me when I was reading. So I really thought like nobody knew what the heck I was trying to say. Um, but what began to happen was, as I worked with people, I began to see and understand that everyone's a storyteller.
Hmm.
And not only my interest in various subjects that I helped develop programs and systems for that are much more didactic, I realized that storytelling really is what I was doing as an artist, what my whole life has been about, and my fascination with how how do we share our collective myth together and our own personal myth.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really fascinating. So, did you did you start out doing some other work? Like, did you have another career that, like, it
Well,
sounds like you had a bunch of different things going on.
lots of different things.
Yeah.
So from the art world, I went into the world of therapy, working in hospitals and treatment centers, and from that I moved more into the business world, and brainstorming and systems and structures, and I think how the writing came along was, and the first thing that I ever wrote that was published was I was working with uh, one of the co-authors of the executive EQ and EQ map that was used by corporations, as far as emotional intelligence, and I wrote a chapter in a textbook, and it was a big deal to see that I had taken these ideas, and even though I was working with collaboratively, um, and then I went on to write the first book with somebody I was working with who was a hedge fund manager, and I realized what I was doing was trying to take the storytelling of anyone, in this case, the hedge fund manager who walked away, um, and what's the essence, what's the story that he needed to tell, and so collectively we co-authored a book on security and wealth, and on and on. I went to the next one. Was I had this dream of what's what's the greatest um, storytellers that are going to shape our future, that have systems and ideas, and that are transformational. And that was the book The Flip that came out in 2006. We interviewed an enormous array of people, from world leaders and celebrities and scientists and healers and spiritual leaders, all around what's this transformation, this flip, this that's possible. So how it all ended, and that's after starting a company and working with lots of best-selling authors and working in developing digital media and all this stuff. In 2016, after almost dying, I wrote my first story.
Mm.
That was my story, and it was like I didn't intend to write a memoir, but it just had to come out, and that was really fundamental for me to become an inspiration for others to tell their stories, because it is an amazing discovery when you begin to look at your life from this mythic perspective.
Mm. Wow, this sounds interesting. So, can you tell us a little bit about almost dying? That's very fascinating to me.
Well, it was, yeah, I mean, I never thought I would have any kind of physical health problem, because of course I drank green juice and did yoga, and realized that our thoughts create our reality. And they probably do, but this reality I created was a pretty disastrous one, because I went through a horrible divorce and debt, and all of a sudden, like, my body has all these bruises on it. I was diagnosed with a blood disorder where my platelets were being killed by antibodies, and I struggled through that, and to do things naturally always, and but finally in 2015, I hit the wall, and when I got to the hospital, my platelet count was zero, and anyway, regardless, from that experience, there's a meditation on mortality that I don't recommend doing unless you really have the emotional strength, and that's to think about what happens when you're gone. The people that love you, how will their lives be? So I was kind of at that point, And that was the inspiration of like, I have to tell my story,
Mm.
you know, because, I didn't, it wasn't like, well, because I'm going to sell 1 million copies. Because I wasn't even thinking of publishing until I gave it to my agent. He was like, oh my God, we got to publish this. But it helps one truly discover why everything is the way it is, because you see it in a perspective of this arc in your life, this incredible mythic arc, and you can see, the dark nights of the soul, which I was able to, kind of dive into, and writing those kinds of stories will bring you right back to those feelings, and you can finally relive it and say, well, I get why I almost died, or why I was depressed, or why, now I'm talking about me personally, but other people, why, I just, wanted to commit suicide, or the different things that people get to when they get to that dark place. And you see it in perspective. It's a beautiful thing. And it takes writing a book sometimes, or a memoir, to see how it all comes together.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you feel like everybody has a story inside of them?
Well, I not only feel that way. It was a couple years ago. We didn't do it this year. It was a summer program called "Writing the Story of Your Soul," and everyone has a story that I believe is the, let's say, the struggle between the soul and the personality. Uh, and if you look at your life and you see when I do this program with people, I no longer teach it in that way, but I do work with people to help them develop the books, uh, and publish them, and build their platform. Um, what I see a lot is when people wake up to what happened for them in their life that was so profound, they want to share it with other people. It's a place of, comes I usually out of empathy and compassion, or just, um, that you're going to entertain somebody because your life is so entertaining. But in general, it's usually what entertains people is the contrast, not just, and that's why people buy celebrity books. They never Celebrities write books. They don't, because I work with some, and developing a book, and it's never like, and then I went to the Academy Awards and I had this really nice dinner at, La Scala, and then we had, it's more like, after that, you know 20th, barbiturate pill and bottle of gin, I found myself floating in my swimming pool, and that's Rocket Man. I mean, that's what made, Elton John's story. If you watch this movie, it just became famous. So it always is a contrast, and people like that have had the hardest lives and have gone through stuff. Usually, when they want to write a book, they want to share the story with someone else, because if you read it, sometimes you don't have to live it. Like in my book, Drowning in the Light, which is my memoir, from the shamanic initiation in Peru, where, I was basically going through altitude sickness, and had to face my own mortality. Then it was a little premature through a shamanic initiation. That was not something that, I ever expected would be as hard as it was. But when I look in the book and it comes back, it's good storytelling. But at the same time, I don't think other people need to go there and go through that hardship to gain the wisdom. And so in writing that, I'm able to share the wisdom and take them on the story. That's why we go to movies. So I think it's really valuable for people to tell the story, because there's something there in it for someone else, and they don't think it until they write it. Hey, this really will help other people.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's so rewarding too to think that your story, no matter how difficult it is, can help somebody. And if they don't have to go through the same thing, all the better, you know. So that's a beautiful way to to put it into the realm of service, which I think is so valuable, because we really sometimes we get caught up in our stories, and I think we feel like, oh no, I can't share that. But if you look at it this way, it's like, yeah, you're really doing a service for the world by sharing it.
I think so, and I develop books more in the personal development space, body, mind, and spirit. Although I've worked on historical novel with an author, but generally they're books that are about the struggles that people go through. For instance, there's a book that we'll be publishing soon around sobriety and grief, and it's somebody's story of finally falling in love, and then the person's diagnosed with cancer and is dying. And these are two people that both were suffering from recovering addicts. And what happens when you go through the grief process and you're a recovering addict is it's a lot of temptation to relapse. So there's a story there about her strength and her power and how she used the transition that he went through to awaken to that place that kept her from relapsing back into addiction. So they do. We wisdom is an important thing for us. It used to be sitting by the fire or whatever and passing stories on. So, and sometimes people write books that are just delightful, just for the fun, to share a story. Or sometimes I work with people because they have studied something for a very long time and they're a master of it, and it's time for them to put their book out and be recognized as an expert, and give people the opportunity to delve into their minds without having to be with them in a physical way.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. So, at what point do you feel like people should talk to somebody like you? Is it after they've already written their book, or at what stage?
Yeah, well, what we really do is we do the book development. So book concept, book brand development, the whole platform, and the publishing happens. So Dreamscope is an imprint of Waterside Productions, meaning that when we publish, the publishing contracts with Waterside, which is a literary agency that represents some of the best authors, especially in this space, like Eckhart Tolle, Neil Donald Walsh, Marie Kondo, that wrote the Tidying Up book. And so we're in good company. And but to get to that contract and to have the book published, I spend 9 months with them developing it. It's a 9-month program, one-on-one, because they need that guidance to get them there, and it takes that time. There's a lot of moving parts, and not just the writing of the book, but structuring it, and also like how are you going to present it. So we work with like social media, video, and ways to start building an audience, start building a community around the book before it's published. And then once we're ready to publish, then that's we it's a Dreamscope book. Waterside is the technical publisher, which is a great thing, because if the book can take off, we have great opportunity with a world-class literary agency behind it. So it's a pretty cool thing that we're doing. But the first thing really is the book concept. So to answer your question, we're not going to publish anyone that we don't develop, because then we'd just be like a press, just here, pay us money, we publish. We don't do that. But in the books that we develop, we really seriously look at the author and their development and their platform development, because it's like you have a podcast. What else? What are the tentacles that are going to reach out and connect to people to bring them to their content? Because it's a pretty oversaturated space. That's why I don't, ever throw numbers out or like guarantees or talk about bestseller or any of that stuff. There's enough people, out there. You can be a best-selling author and make millions, and I just chuckle.
Yes.
Reminds me of similar world is coming to Hollywood to make a movie. Jeff Skoll, who was the CEO of eBay, that's what he said when he started Participant Media, which now is making some of the bigger movies or biggest hits, or at least Academy Award-winning movies like last year. But anyway, he came to LA and he said, you know how you become a millionaire in Hollywood? He goes, come as a billionaire. So, you're writing books, making movies, all these things. We're driven to express ourselves. And it's, if you're just writing a book, you think to make money, it's not. But for people that, that are coaches and trainers and healers and anything else like that, it does, put you in a different space as far as being that leading expert, um, and just more opportunities, I believe. And it's for some people, especially in like the coaching industry, it's really uh, makes a difference in how you are perceived. We're doing something like trainings and retreats, so I believe it's a good thing. And when you share a book with somebody, you're sharing a part of your soul, and so you do have to put yourself. Some people don't want to be that public. They don't, that's not what they want. They'd rather be behind the scenes.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, so how can people work with you, and what would be the steps that they would need to take?
Well, we have two things going on. One is we have a program. It's a very small group coaching program. We'll be starting another one in January. We'll be having them regularly, and we keep these groups under 10. Right now, the one I'm running is only 5 people in it, and it's called the Idea Accelerator: Building an Authentic Author Platform. And this works even for so somebody has written a book. This does work because they may have written it, like, I don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to message and all that. And this is very comprehensive, but it also is very good for a person that hasn't written the book yet, because the book is the centerpiece of their author platform. But they, start building that and building a community around the content even before a book is launched is a really smart way to do this. So that's a program that we have that they can do. Is 10 weeks, and it's an hour a week on Zoom. Other than that, they can directly with me. There's still some openings, in the new year. And that basically, I like to hear what the concept is, what where they fit. And we're looking at certain areas as, oh yeah, I want to do a book on mindfulness, I want to do, but everything I want to do with somebody is they're the content provider, but I'm here as that book brander to say, like, let's come up with the coolest title, let's make it the really distinct presentation. And that's what we're doing, developing that with folks. So from the beginning, if you just have the idea and, like, there's a concept in your head, or you think there's a concept, or you a few different concepts, I can just speak to anyone, and in a very short time, and get a sense of where we could go and how we could help you, if
Mhm.
that's what you want.
And what is your website?
The website is Dream Sculpt. It's Dream, DREAM, Sculpt, SCULPT. So dream, like go to sleep and dream. Sculpt, like a sculptor would do. Dreamsculpt, one word.com. And if you go on there, you'll see there's books, there's media, there's videos, there's a lot that you can check out, and things that you can experience. We have about a dozen videos. We create social media videos for authors, the authors we work with, and even other authors. And you'll see some of those. So there's at least a dozen on there. And they all, teach you something in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And that's the point. What we want to do is not just to teach, but really inspire instead of like sell, because it's all about inspiring people and bring great, good energy to planet Earth. That's
Okay, that's terrific.
that's what keeps me waking up every day. It's,
Okay.
service.
Well, thank you so
Joyful.
much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And
You're welcome.
everybody, thank you so much. Remember, you can live the life that you want regardless of your story. And we'll catch you again really soon. Thank you so much. Take care.